Rain fell quietly over the city of Crestwood. Not the dramatic kind of rain that floods streets and makes headlines. Just soft, steady drops, the kind that feels heavy only to the heart. Ethan Parker stood at the bus stop, shoulders slumped, hands buried deep inside his jacket pockets. His phone screen glowed dimly in the gray evening light. $12.47. That was all he had left. 2 weeks ago, Ethan had a job. Today, he had nothing. No job, no savings, no answers. The tech company he worked for had downsized suddenly. No warning, no severance, just a short meeting and a cardboard box for his belongings. "You're a good worker," his manager had said. But business is business. Business. That single word had shattered his entire world. Ethan was only 28, but life already felt unbearably heavy. He rented a small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building with cracked walls and unreliable heating. His parents had passed away years earlier in a car accident, leaving him alone with student loans and memories. He had no siblings, no safety net, just himself. And lately, even that felt like too much. That night, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed staring at the ceiling. The room was silent except for the ticking clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. Each second felt like a reminder of how fast time was moving while his life was standing still. He opened his laptop and started applying for jobs. One application, then another, then another. Rejections began arriving within days. "We regret to inform you. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. We'll keep your resume on file." Empty words, polite excuses. His bank balance dropped lower. His fridge became emptier. Sleep stopped coming easily. And faith began to fade. Ethan used to believe in God. He used to pray before meals. Used to thank God for small blessings. Used to believe everything happened for a reason. But now he stared at the ceiling at night and whispered, "God, are you even listening?" There was no answer, only silence. One afternoon, while walking home from another unsuccessful interview, Ethan noticed a small church on the corner of Maple Street. He had passed it many times before, but never paid attention. Today, something inside him pulled him toward it. The wooden doors were slightly open. Inside, the air was warm. A few elderly people sat quietly in the pews. At the front stood an old pastor with kind eyes and silver hair. He was speaking softly. "Sometimes," the pastor said, "God allows us to lose everything so we can finally see what truly matters." Ethan sat in the back. He didn't know why, he just did. The pastor continued, "You may feel abandoned, forgotten, broken, but listen carefully." He paused. "God never abandons a story that will restore faith." Those words struck Ethan's heart like lightning. God never abandons a story that will restore faith. After the service, Ethan stood near the exit. The pastor approached him with a gentle smile. "I haven't seen you here before." Ethan nodded awkwardly. I just needed somewhere quiet." The pastor placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Hard season." Ethan swallowed. "Yeah." The pastor looked into his eyes, as if he could see every hidden worry. "Let me tell you something, son," he said softly. "When God is silent, he is usually working behind the scenes." Ethan wanted to believe that. But belief felt fragile. Days turned into weeks. Bills piled up. The landlord left warning notes. Ethan started skipping meals. He sold his old watch. Then his headphones. Then his gaming console. Each item carried memories. Each sale felt like losing another piece of himself. One evening, while walking past a grocery store, Ethan saw a homeless man sitting outside. The man held a cardboard sign. "Hungry. Anything helps." Ethan hesitated. He had only enough money for instant noodles. Still, he walked inside, bought a sandwich and a bottle of water, and handed them to the man. The man's eyes filled with tears. "God bless you," he said. Ethan forced a small smile. He walked away wondering, "God, when will you bless me?" That night, Ethan received an email. Subject line, "Interview opportunity." His heart raced. He opened it quickly. It was from a small startup company. They wanted to meet him the next morning. Hope flickered inside his chest, weak but alive. He knelt beside his bed. He hadn't prayed properly in weeks. "God," he whispered, "I don't understand what you're doing, but please, don't leave me." A tear rolled down his cheek. The next morning, Ethan wore his only suit. It didn't fit perfectly anymore. Stress had stolen weight from his body. The interview went okay. Not amazing, not terrible. The manager thanked him politely. "We'll get back to you." Those words again. Ethan walked out, heart heavy. That evening, he returned home to find an eviction notice on his door. 14 days. That's all he had. He slid down against the wall and sat on the cold hallway floor. For the first time in years, Ethan cried openly. Not quietly, not silently, but deeply. His faith felt shattered. His strength was gone. He whispered through sobs, "God, why?" No thunder answered. No miracle appeared. Only silence. But somewhere beyond what Ethan could see, a story was still unfolding. Because God never abandons a story that will restore faith, Ethan barely slept that night. The eviction notice lay folded on his bedside table like a quiet threat. 14 days. That was all the time he had before losing the last thing he could still call home. Morning light crept through the cracked blinds. Ethan stared at the ceiling, replaying every mistake he thought he had ever made. Maybe I wasn't smart enough. Maybe I should have saved more. Maybe God is done with me. He forced himself out of bed. There was no room left for comfort. Only survival. Ethan spent the next few days walking across the city, visiting offices, cafes, warehouses, any place with a "Help Wanted" sign. Most managers didn't even look at his resume. Some promised to call. None did. His phone stayed silent. His stomach stayed empty. On the 5th day, his landlord called. "Ethan, I'm sorry," the man said coldly. "If you can't pay at least half by next week, I'll have to move forward with eviction." Ethan closed his eyes. "I understand." He didn't, but he said it anyway. That afternoon, Ethan wandered into a small public library. It was warm inside, quiet and peaceful. He sat near a window and opened a random book. It fell open to a highlighted sentence. "Faith is not believing God can. It's knowing He will, even when you can't see how." Ethan stared at the words. Was this coincidence? Or was someone trying to speak to him? He leaned back and sighed. "God, I'm tired." As Ethan left the library, he noticed an elderly man struggling to carry a box of donated clothes into a nearby shelter. Without thinking, Ethan walked over. "Sir, let me help." The man smiled. "Thank you, son." They carried the boxes together inside. The shelter was small but clean. Children played quietly in one corner. A few women sat sipping tea. The elderly man introduced himself as Mr. Harris. "You volunteer here?" Mr. Harris asked. Ethan shook his head. "No, just helping." Mr. Harris studied him. "You look like someone carrying heavy burdens." Ethan gave a weak laugh. "Yeah, you could say that." Mr. Harris offered him tea. They sat at a small table near the window. After a moment of silence, Ethan found himself opening up. He talked about losing his job. About the eviction notice. About feeling abandoned. Mr. Harris listened carefully. When Ethan finished, the old man nodded slowly. "You know," he said gently, "my wife and I lost everything once." Ethan looked up. "Everything? Our business failed. Our savings disappeared. We lived in our car for 3 months." Ethan was shocked. "But, you seem so peaceful." Mr. Harris smiled. "That peace came later." He leaned forward. "Let me tell you something important, Ethan." Ethan hadn't told him his name. Yet somehow, Mr. Harris knew. "When God is breaking you, Mr. Harris continued, He is also building you. We just don't see the construction." Ethan felt something stir inside his chest. Before Ethan left, Mr. Harris handed him a small card. On it was written, "Hope Outreach Center, volunteers needed. Come back tomorrow if you'd like," Mr. Harris said. "We can always use extra hands." Ethan hesitated. "I don't get paid." Mr. Harris nodded. "I know." Then he smiled. "But sometimes, what you receive is greater than money." That night, Ethan prayed again. Not with fancy words. Not with confidence. Just honesty. "God, I don't know what you're doing. But I'll show up tomorrow." The next day, Ethan volunteered. He helped serve meals. He carried boxes. He cleaned tables. He listened to stories. Broken people, lost people, people who had suffered far more than he had. And strangely, he felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, he forgot his own pain. A young boy hugged him after receiving a plate of food. "Thank you, mister." That small moment felt bigger than any paycheck. 3 days later, something unexpected happened. A woman walked into the shelter wearing a professional suit. She introduced herself as Linda Cooper, director of a local community employment program. She was there to discuss partnerships. Mr. Harris called Ethan over. "Linda, this is Ethan. He's been helping us all week." Linda shook Ethan's hand. "What do you do, Ethan?" "I used to work in IT support." Linda's eyes lit up. "Really? We're actually looking for someone with your background for a short-term contract position. Ethan froze. A job? Yes. It's temporary, but there's potential for full-time. His heart pounded. When can you start? Tomorrow. That night, Ethan cried again. But this time, they were tears of relief. It wasn't a dream job. It wasn't permanent, but it was something. Enough to stop the eviction. Enough to breathe. Enough to remind him God was still working, quietly, faithfully. On his way home, Ethan passed the church on Maple Street. He went inside. Kneeling at the front, he whispered, "I'm sorry for doubting you." No loud miracles happened. No angels appeared, but peace filled his heart. Yet this was only the beginning. Because the real test of Ethan's faith had not arrived yet. And sometimes, God allows hope to rise, only to see how tightly you will hold on when the storm returns. Ethan started his new job the very next morning. It wasn't glamorous. The office was small, the desk was old, and the computer fan made strange noises. But to Ethan, it felt like a miracle. He worked harder than he ever had before. He arrived early. He stayed late. He volunteered for extra tasks. Not because he was trying to impress anyone, but because he knew how close he had come to losing everything. With his first paycheck, Ethan paid half his rent. The landlord removed the eviction notice without saying much. Ethan walked back to his apartment that evening with tears in his eyes. For the first time in months, he cooked a proper meal. He thanked God before eating. Quietly, sincerely. Weeks passed. The temporary contract slowly turned into extended hours. Then into a longer agreement. Linda often praised his dedication. "You don't just work," she told him once. "You care." But life wasn't finished testing Ethan. Not yet. One cold evening, Ethan received a call from the shelter. Mr. Harris had collapsed. He was in the hospital. Ethan rushed there immediately. The old man lay weak on the bed, breathing slowly. When he saw Ethan, he smiled faintly. "You came." "Of course," Ethan said, holding his hand. Mr. Harris' voice was soft. "Promise me something. Anything. Never forget, when you had nothing, God was doing something." Ethan nodded, tears forming. 2 days later, Mr. Harris passed away peacefully. The shelter felt emptier. So did Ethan's heart. At the funeral, only a few people attended. Volunteers, shelter residents, a couple of old friends. Ethan stood quietly at the back. After the service, Linda approached him. "Ethan, there's something you should know." She handed him an envelope. "Mr. Harris asked me to give you this." Ethan opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Dear Ethan, if you are reading this, it means I have gone home. I want you to understand something. The day you helped me carry those boxes, I prayed for you that night. I asked God to take care of you the way you took care of others. But there's more. Years ago, my wife and I started a small trust fund to help people who showed genuine compassion in hard times. You are one of them. Use this not just to survive, but to serve. God never abandons a story that will restore faith. Mr. Harris." Ethan's hands trembled. Linda spoke softly. "The trust fund covers 1 year of rent and living expenses, and includes a small amount for education or training." Ethan couldn't speak. He could barely breathe. A stranger. A simple act of kindness. And now, this. That night, Ethan sat alone in his apartment. He replayed everything. Losing his job. The eviction notice. The shelter. The sandwich he gave to a homeless man. Helping Mr. Harris. Volunteering. The temporary job. And now this. It all connected. Every painful step. Every silent prayer. Every moment he thought God had left him. He knelt beside his bed. This time, his voice was strong. "God, you were there the whole time." Months later, Ethan enrolled in a professional certification program. He finished it with top marks. Soon after, Linda helped him secure a permanent position at a larger company. Better pay, benefits, stability. But Ethan never stopped visiting the shelter. He volunteered every weekend. He mentored young men struggling like he once had. He listened. He encouraged. He reminded them, "You're not forgotten." One evening, a young man asked him, "How did you survive when everything fell apart?" Ethan smiled gently. "I didn't survive alone." He pointed upward. "I learned something." "What?" Ethan replied quietly. "God never abandons a story that will restore faith." Years later, Ethan stood on the stage of the Hope Outreach Center as a guest speaker. The room was full. People listened as he shared his journey. Not as a victim, but as a witness. "When I lost everything," Ethan said, "I thought God had walked away." He paused. "But I learned." His eyes scanned the crowd. Sometimes God steps back so we can learn to walk by faith. Silence filled the room. Your pain has purpose. Your delay has meaning. Your struggle is shaping you. He smiled. And your story isn't over. Outside, the rain began to fall again. Soft, quiet, just like the night everything had started. But this time, Ethan walked through it with peace in his heart. Because he finally understood. God never abandons a story that will restore faith.